All right, so we just had an absolutely ridiculous weekend of college football. There's so much to break down. We're going to get through so much, probably stuff we won't even get to that usually I would get to talk about. But here's my week 5 analysis and takeaways. So, usually I like to start off with some right wrong, but we have to start off with what in the world was happening in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So, Alabama defeats Georgia 41-34, and there's so many narratives from this game. You're going to talk about the quarterback battles, how well Jalen Milroe played, how bad Carson Beck played at times versus how well he played at times. Alabama hitting Georgia in the mouth, and then Georgia fighting back. Kirby Smart losing to Alabama again. I mean, there's so much that this game impacts. But so just starting off, I mean, I was ready. Alabama goes up 28-0 on Georgia, who's supposed to be the new powerhouse of college football, essentially winning 2 of the last 3 national championships. Nick Saban's gone from Alabama, and Alabama just looks like they're going to absolutely destroy Georgia. It's 28-0, and then I think it's 30-7. It's about to be halftime, and I'm starting to prep for the video. I'm thinking how I'm going to talk about how Alabama should be the new number 1 team in the country. How it's one of the most impressive wins I've ever seen. All this, like, I've never seen anyone punch Georgia in the mouth like that to open up a game. So I'm getting ready to come on and say all this. And then Georgia's, slowly making their way back into the game because it gets to, 33-15. Then it's 33-21. Then it's 33-28. And then the ending of this was just madness with Dylan Bell hitting the 67-yarder to give Georgia the lead, followed by Ryan Williams immediately catching that 75-yard touchdown where he does the double spin move. Just ridiculous stuff at the end of this game. But so Alabama wins at 41-34, and now I don't even know what all to talk about. I mean, I still was so impressed by the way Alabama came out in this game because, like I mentioned, I've never seen a team like against Kirby Smart's Georgia punch them in the mouth that way. But the other thing is I've never seen someone take a punch like that from Alabama and fight back and have the lead. So it was like, I can't imagine. I did not think it was possible to go down 28-0 to Alabama and have the lead later in the game. And I didn't think it was possible to go up 28-0 on Georgia. 2 things I thought I'd never see both happen in this game. And then, yeah, it's just like I'm sure you guys know, it's tale of 2 halves, right? Georgia played like the real Georgia in the second half. At least I think that's more like the real Georgia. I don't think the first half one was. And I think Alabama kind of relaxed a little bit. I do think the right team won in the sense that I think Alabama's better than Georgia right now. I think Georgia has some problems. And I think, maybe it's hot take, I think Alabama has the better quarterback. I've been saying this. Jalen Milroe, I said in my preview video, has the higher ceiling and the lower floor. So he can, but we'll talk about that, the lower floor in a second. But the higher ceiling thing is like because of the plays he can make with his legs and the deep ball. I thought he had the chance to take over the game in a way Carson Beck didn't. And he'd been playing so well this season under this new system with Kalen DeBoer that I was thinking he could still take over his game. He has more of those Superman qualities. But I also thought he could have a lower floor because there are games where, his passing's just off and he's a little bit more one-dimensional. But he hasn't looked like that at all this season. And right now, I think he's one of the leading candidates for the Heisman Trophy. It was a great game by him, over like 400 total yards. With like 300 some on the ground, over 100 something. 300 something through the air, over 100 something on the ground. Ridiculous performance from him. But you can't talk about Jalen Miller without talking about Carson Beck. And this was disappointing because I'll admit I was lower on Carson Beck than most people. I didn't see how he was projected as like this top pick in the NFL draft. But I still thought he was a good quarterback. And he just got rattled really quickly in the first half. I will say, like, there were moments, like, even at the start of the game, he hits Arian Smith on the deep ball, and Arian Smith, the ball goes through his hands. But then after that, the offense looked out of rhythm. He throws the interception where he's clearly trying to change the play, and he's just rushing to get the ball out. That was a bad interception. And then Georgia finally got some momentum getting the 4th down stop, and then he immediately throws a bad interception there. And then, the fumble, Georgia again getting momentum, and he stripped and fumbles. And then Georgia with a chance to win, he throws another interception on a bad throw. The ball's got to be outside. He throws it inside. So just really brutal mistakes from a quarterback that's supposed to be, I guess he's supposed to be the best in the country, or at least amongst them, and he doesn't look like that. Now, you got to give him credit because after the first half, I was I thought you had to pull him. I thought he looked just like shook, like he didn't know what to do. I thought you had to pull him from the game. But no, Kirby rolls with him, and he bounces back, gets him back in the game, but then makes the mistake at the end, which is unfortunate. And then I think you do have to talk about Kirby Smart in the first half. I mean, clearly Georgia was just not as well prepared, and I think that's a coaching thing. So once again, Kirby Smart looks like he has an Alabama problem. He's out coached by Kalen DeBoer coming out of the gate. So I can't imagine Georgia fans are too happy with that. The only other takeaway would be, neither team's eliminated because we now have this 12-team format. I mean, they wouldn't even be eliminated in the old format, but now especially very much the whole season still in front of both these teams. Obviously for Alabama, but Georgia still can do everything they wanted to do before this game. And I still think these are two of the best teams in the country. Georgia's got more stuff to figure out, though, than Alabama. Because Alabama, you just got to work on staying aggressive, I think, and not relaxing, because I feel like that's kind of what happened a little bit. But Georgia, there's some issues to be worked out there that the staff's got to work on. But overall, this was, I think, on one hand, it was like a disappointment of a game for so long. And then it ended up living to like all the hype that it had. It was like beyond even like the best expectations for how the game could have ended. So it was like everything we thought it would be, but like nothing we expected at all. It was great, a classic game, and nothing diluted about it. Just a great college football game, probably the best of the season so far, or at least one of the best of the season. And this will be a classic that people remember, I think. But so we had to lead with this before we get into the right wrong, which we can do now. And starting off with right, the Arizona Wildcats, maybe my favorite team in college football. I definitely root for them. But they defeated Utah 23-10, and I was predicting an upset. Now I predicted, I believe, 30-20 was my prediction, so I thought it'd be a little more high scoring. But I thought that they would beat Utah on the road, and Utah was like a 9-point favorite, I believe. Not many people were picking Arizona. They thought Arizona wouldn't match up well enough on the line of scrimmage after the Kansas State game, and I thought Arizona was going to play much better coming off a bye, which they did. They were able to defeat Utah, and what I was not expecting was how good Arizona's defense was. Now, Utah could run the ball, but Arizona had like a bend, not break approach, or at least that's how it ended up happening, because Utah got inside like at least the 20 multiple times, and then Arizona came up with fourth down stops or held them to a field goal once. And then the DBs, maybe, I guess some of them maybe thought was pass interference, but I do think it was evenly called both ways. They let the DBs be physical, and Arizona's DBs, especially Takario Davis, projected, I think, first-round pick, was breaking up an insane amount of passes. Great performance by the Arizona secondary. And Utah, I think you really want Cam Rising back. You really need him back, and I don't know when he's coming back. But for Arizona, you get your season back on track. You're now undefeated in conference play because the Kansas State game was not a conference game. And now you're back where you thought you'd be, looking like a top contender in the Big 12. That was what I was projecting, and that was correct. But now something I got wrong is actually, they were here last week too. I was wrong about them. And I feel like I had to put them again because I've continued to doubt BYU, and they keep proving me wrong. I said I would sell stock of them before the Kansas State game because I thought they would lose. I thought they were kind of like a lucky undefeated team. And then I picked Baylor to beat them this week because I thought coming off Kansas State game, there was a letdown spot. And instead, BYU gets up huge early, but then almost blows it. So I do think they maybe have some depth issues maybe, or just, I don't know. I don't know why, because they looked so much better than Baylor early, and it was just kind of slowly collapsing. But Baylor, couldn't quite take the game, although BYU tried to give it to them. It felt like neither team wanted to win at the end of this game. But I got to put them on here because I picked against them 2 weeks in a row. I thought they were kind of like a fraudulent undefeated team, but they look pretty legit. And their next game is in a couple weeks after bye against my Arizona Wildcats. And now that's a game where I'm like, I think it's in Provo, Utah, so it's in BYU. That Arizona could definitely lose. And before the season, I didn't think BYU was good. I wasn't picking them to make a bowl game. And now he's sitting here 5-0, a legitimate top 25 team. So I'm definitely wrong about BYU in the preseason and these past couple weeks. Moving on, we do some game analyses, just some what were some games that I wanted to talk a little bit more about. And the first one is going to be Miami, Virginia Tech. This happened on Friday. Absolutely crazy ending. Miami wins it 38-34 in a very controversial fashion. Virginia Tech throws the Hail Mary. The refs call it complete. Then they review it forever, come back, say it was incomplete. I personally didn't get how they called it complete in the first place. I thought it was incomplete. I thought the right call was made in the end. But I like Miami. Not like my favorite team or anything, but I know a lot of people don't like Miami at all, and I kind of like Miami. But I picked them before the season to go undefeated, so they were my projected number one overall seed in the playoff, and I picked Cam Ward to win the Heisman. So he was making some Heisman worthy moments with that two-handed pass. But I thought Miami was gonna lose, and then they come back, and then Mario Cristobal driving me crazy with the rushing three players, letting Virginia Tech get an easy shot at a Hail Mary or a clear, no pressure at all. So that was frustrating. But Miami escapes, and that's really what it's about. But this was a great game. But yeah, I want to talk about Virginia Tech. This is what I'm talking about. Last week I said you got to take every game with a grain of salt. You don't know what to expect because Virginia Tech, you lose to Rutgers. Okay, Rutgers pretty good. You lose to Vanderbilt. Okay, Vanderbilt's okay. And then you have Miami beaten. You looks like the game's in hand. And Miami, we've seen them rolling. Now you have a home game against an opponent that's been a disappointment so far this season. And you do not play up to your standards. But you come out with the win, which is what's really important. But I think Miami, you gotta be more focused because I don't think Miami's good enough to the point where you can overlook opponents. And I still have questions about their coaching. But the difference, of course, is you have Cam Ward, who even when he doesn't play his best game, this game was nowhere near his best with the turnovers, but he still makes the plays necessary to lead you to a win. Xavier Restrepo made huge plays as well with the falling down catch, or the catch on the ground, I mean. But so it's just big players making big time plays to get the win. But I think there are some concerns for Miami, and I am nervous about next week at Cal, which I'll talk about more when we do predictions for next week. But next game, Penn State, Illinois. Penn State wins it 21-7, and I was what's the word? I guess just pleasantly surprised by Illinois. I thought this would be more of a game where Illinois got exposed by Penn State, but Illinois, it was more just what we've seen the past few years actually. Illinois could not score on Penn State. The defense shut them down, and Penn State's offense still doesn't look great, which is I think. If you're a Penn State fan, you've got to be nervous a little, or at least disappointed, because I think early in the season it looked like, Drew Allers may be breaking out. This offense will be really good. But Illinois kind of shut it down for the most part because it's 21-7, but one of those was a pick six that Altmaier threw. So this Penn State offense still has a lot of room to improve. Will it improve enough to be able to beat a team like Ohio State when they play? We'll see. Right now I'm skeptical, though. Whereas earlier this season, I thought the offense was clicking. So I think Penn State, the defense looks like it's still great because there was questions earlier when they struggled against Bowling Green. It's is the defense as good as it used to be? The defense looks like it's still great. The offense looks like it's still got a lot to improve on. But then Illinois, I think just a solid football team. Not a great football team, but just a good team. And, they're at least competitive with Penn State. Now, it's going to be hard for them to, you play this game a bunch. Illinois is rarely going to win. Excuse me. Rarely going to win because their offense just isn't up to par with Penn State's defense, but they can at least compete with Penn State. And they're not, Illinois is a legitimate borderline top 25 team. We'll talk a little bit more about what this game means towards the end of the video, but for now, we can just talk about what was the biggest surprise of the weekend. And that was the Kentucky Wildcats. The second time they've been the biggest surprise, or maybe third time they've been on the biggest surprises. Because I know when they lost to Georgia, they made it on biggest surprise. I was shocked how close they kept it. But they might have been biggest surprise when they got destroyed by South Carolina as well. So Kentucky, I just can't get a read for them. Every weekend, I'm surprised by what they do. But yeah, so they defeat Ole Miss 20-17. And this was pretty shocking to me. Ole Miss was at home, so it wasn't a road game. I thought Ole Miss, we know that Ole Miss is supposed to have the more talented roster. I mean, we all think they do. And Ole Miss to only put up 17 points when you look at how well Trey Harris played, I think going 11 for 176, when you have Jackson Dart, when you have Lane Kiffin play calling, to only put up 17 was really shocking. But Kentucky, I guess they've been good defensively so far this year. They also limited Georgia to 13, right? But it's weird that South Carolina was able to beat Kentucky so easily, and Kentucky looked so incompetent on offense in that game. And then the next 2 weeks they had a hard fought battle with Georgia, and then also or not the next 2 weeks, but two of their next games, hard fought battle with Georgia, and then upset Ole Miss. So that's just really surprising. And then Ole Miss, I think it's a little bit concerning because you're supposed to this is a game you definitely should win, but you when you looked at Ole Miss schedule, it's supposed to be really easy, but there's not a huge opportunity for big strength of schedule wins, right? I mean, you have Georgia later on, but if you can't beat Kentucky, I mean, I guess Kentucky play with Georgia as well, but I think you got to be concerned because this was a team that had at the very least playoff expectations, and this is a really concerning loss for that. I still think they'll bounce back, but I mean, shout out to Kentucky for being able to pull this upset. Obviously, Ole Miss had the chance to win the chance to go to overtime with a field goal. They missed it, but I thought Mark Stoops, great call, going for the fourth down. I thought he made a mistake against Georgia of punting it when he should have gone for it. This time he goes for it, and it pays off with Barry Brown making the big catch. So that was huge. I thought a great call. But so great win for Kentucky. Ole Miss, I think you got to be concerned if you're a fan, but I think they'll bounce back. But tough game on the road is South Carolina this week for them. Definitely losable, and we'll see how they respond. Now, who was the most impressive team from the weekend? And like I said, when I was first doing this, I thought for sure I'm going to come on here and talk about Alabama. But with how they play in the second half, I was actually most impressed by the Colorado Buffaloes. Prime time. They beat UCF 48-21 in what was easily the best game I've seen Colorado play under Deion Sanders, or for that matter, the best game I've seen Colorado play in years. They were good in pass protection, and they did a pretty good job stopping the run against a team that's one of the best rush teams in the country. Forced them to throw the ball, I think, over 30-plus times. Travis Hunter gets an interception. I think there was maybe one more interception. I can't remember, though. But so they were pretty good in run stop. They were good in pass protection, and they ran the ball a little bit, and especially early. So you established the run a little bit, which opened up your ability to get into your pass-heavy offense, but UCF still had to respect the run. They looked like a real football team. They didn't look like, I mean, for the most part, they've looked like kind of like a gimmicky football team. When you're bad on the line, they were bad on line of scrimmage, no run game, no run stop game, no blocking game, but they have these stars in Shador and Travis Hunter and this explosive passing game. If they can, get the ball out quick and stuff. But this is the first time I've watched them since probably the TCU game, and they look like a good football team. And now at 4-1, and you beat UCF in the Big 12, and you beat Baylor in the Big 12. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but UCF was supposed to be one of the best teams, and I thought they were one of the best teams in the Big 12. Now, I wasn't as high on them as some people, but I mean, I think ESPN's playoff predictor had them as the most likely team to win the Big 12. So you just beat on the road a legitimate playoff a legitimate team that can make the playoff in UCF. Because if you win the Big 12, you're in the playoff. So Colorado actually could be. If they play like this, how they played today, they could be a contender to make the playoff. Now, I don't think they will play like this because it's the only time I've seen them do it. They didn't play like this against Baylor. Certainly didn't play like this against Nebraska or North Dakota State. So I don't think this is going to happen consistently. But I do think this shows they're clearly making steps in the right direction. And before, I was not thinking that they might struggle to get to 5 wins, and they're already at 4-1. So I think they have a real chance to make a bowl game. I still think they'll probably don't have the depth to make it through a whole season, but it's a great win for them, and they were my most impressive team from the weekend. Just some other games I wanted to talk about before we wrap it up, and that's Michigan defeats Minnesota. Another controversial ending with the onside kick being wiped out for offside, which was the offside? I don't know. It was tight. Maybe Minnesota would have been able to pull the crazy upset because they were down 24-3 in the fourth, lost at 27-24. But this is the second straight week where Michigan's looked great in the first half, And then this time it was more specifically the fourth quarter. It was more so just the whole second half against USC until the very end, where they've just kind of imploded in the second half, but still found a way to win. But so I think that's probably coaching. I think Sharon Moore's got to figure out, like, I don't know what's happening after halftime, but there's something he's got to work on there to get them to play a full game of good football. And then Oklahoma defeats Auburn. Peyton Thorne, he blew the game. And, I mean, it's tough because he was actually playing really well, which was very unexpected. But they hadn't really turned the ball over. And Auburn, I think, had been leading the SEC in turnovers. Peyton Thorne had a 4-interception game. The backup had 3-interception game. And Oklahoma was leading the SEC in, like, forced turnovers. And I don't think there really been one. And then Peyton Thorne throws the pick six that kind of blows the game. Then on the Oklahoma side, the offense still didn't look great. I'm not sure that Hawkins is better than Jackson Arnold, but it seems like they're going to roll with him. But they were able to survive Auburn, but definitely neither team looks very good right now. Auburn looks like they'll struggle to make a bowl game. Oklahoma could as well. I think Oklahoma, I still think when they get healthy, they'll be a solid team, like healthier, just because they have a lot of good players out, but still not as good as I thought they would have been in the preseason. Then Notre Dame gets a really good win over Louisville. This was pretty, Louisville's a good team. Notre Dame was at home, so they should win. But the best game Riley Leonard's played so far this year, which you got to give you hope as a Notre Dame fan that he can play like this from here on out. The defense was still very good, and they made play, like, you forced a fumble on Tyler Shuck, you get interception on Tyler Shuck, you blocked the punt. And Louisville, you still play well too. You competed with a really good team on the road, and I think with a weaker ACC, Louisville's still alive, because I think you're going to get Miami at home. I think you avoid Clemson. So Louisville's still alive, and they're a pretty good team, probably the third best team in the ACC behind Miami and Clemson. They're still alive. And then Notre Dame, you play like this, you can win USC still on the schedule, Georgia Tech maybe, but it's pretty workable schedule still. But you can't think that way because that's what everyone said after the Texas A&M game. You lose to Northern Illinois. You don't want to do something like that again. And then Kansas State defeats Oklahoma State. This was kind of what I was expecting, but I thought I was going to be wrong early on because Oklahoma State had a drive where Ollie Gordon, I think he had 2 runs this game that were longer than any run he'd had so far this year. So I thought maybe this was the Ollie Gordon breakout, and Oklahoma State was going to look like the O-line in the run game we thought they could be in the preseason. Then it kind of went away, but then Alan Bowman was kind of burning the Kansas State secondary. But then Kansas State scores like 35 straight points before Oklahoma State scores again. And they just ran the ball on him. Avery Johnson was looking pretty accurate. And when he's throwing the ball well, Kansas State's very formidable. It's just there's going to be games at this. He's not consistent enough as a passer to be great every week. So there's going to be games or even just plays within a game where he'll miss an open guy downfield or he'll sail it, throw an interception like we saw in this game. So there's going to be mistakes he makes that I think that's where the concern is for Kansas State. But they are so good running the ball and they make plays with their defense and special teams that they're a top contender in the Big 12. And Oklahoma State, this team's just very disappointing. Not at all what people thought they'd be in the preseason. Then I just want to talk about these 4 guys I think have taken the lead in the Heisman race to this point. Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe, I think, have been the 2 best quarterbacks on top contenders, which, is usually who wins the Heisman is a top contending team's quarterback. Cam Ward, 300 yards every game, and he has, the push pass that's like a Heisman moment kind of thing. And Jalen Milroe with how well he played against Georgia in the first half and for the whole game. When you play that well in a game in prime time against a team where everybody's watching, you're going to get yourself into the Heisman race. And then Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty are just ridiculous. Ashton Jeanty just rushed for like 260 yards and 4 touchdowns. And that was like his second best game this year, which is crazy. And then Travis Hunter plays every snap, gets touchdown and an interception. Just crazy stuff. So those 4 guys, I think, right now are in the lead for the Heisman Trophy. But let's do our final takeaways from the week. So, biggest takeaway, number 3, I think this might be the best wide receiver class ever, or at least that I've seen. I'm talking about true freshmen. Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State is ridiculous, and Ryan Williams for Alabama is ridiculous. But beyond just them, Bryant Wesco for Clemson, very good, and TJ Moore for Clemson, very good. Ryan Wingo for Texas, very good. And Cam Coleman for Auburn, very good. So there's like a lot of true freshmen making an impact. And I still think there's other guys that'll emerge too, like a Micah Hudson for Texas Tech. I still think could emerge. But just led by Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith mainly, which let me know who you guys think is better between them. This might be the best wide receiver class ever as true freshmen. Like, obviously, as they develop, they might not be as good as other classes that developed, but in terms of true freshman impact, this might be the best wide receiver class ever. Number 2, I think the Big 12 is looking more and more like it only gets one team in. So there's only 2 teams left undefeated in Iowa State and BYU. And although I risk being wrong about them throughout, I don't think BYU is remaining undefeated. You look at their schedule, I think it's just too tough because you're going to have Arizona, you're going to have Oklahoma State, at UCF, and at Utah as your next 4 games. I think you lose probably 2 of those at least. And then Iowa State has looked very good, especially on defense, but with how their offense has struggled, only putting up like 21 against North Dakota, 20 against Iowa, 20 against Houston, there's always a chance you go down as well. And you end the season with Utah and Kansas State back to back. And then Utah, maybe if Cam Rising was healthy, it'd be different. But until he comes back, they're like very limited offensively. Kansas State, we've seen what can happen on a bad day. And everyone else already has at least one loss as well. So it's looking more and more like the Big 12 is only getting one team in the playoff, and that's whoever wins the conference championship. And finally, I think the conference hierarchies are starting to reveal themselves. Like, if you look at the ACC, yes, I know that Duke and Pitt are still undefeated, but they're not actually good. But it's Clemson and Miami at the top, and then Louisville's kind of at second tier with probably like an SMU, and then we'll see what Duke and Pitt are. But you can kind of see that. And then the Big 12 is the weird one because it's like just the top half of the conference is one tier and the bottom half. So like BYU, Colorado, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Arizona, like UCF, Kansas State, Utah. And on the other side, you like West Virginia, Cincinnati, Houston, Kansas, Baylor. It's not really tiered off, but the one you can really see it is the Big 10, where you got like Ohio State and Oregon, I think, are beginning to separate. Then below them, you have like the next level team where you'll see like a Penn State, a Michigan, and a USC. But then you have like Rutgers and Indiana, who are like sneaky, like with easy schedules. Could they get to the Big 10 title game? Maybe. And they're they're in like that tier with an Illinois, Nebraska, and Iowa. So you're seeing that emerge. And then the SEC, you got Alabama, Texas, Georgia, probably Tennessee as well there. And then you kind of see Ole Miss fall behind them, maybe more with the LSUs and the LSU tier with maybe an A&M. We'll see what A&M is going forward. Maybe a South Carolina, maybe an Oklahoma. Oh, a Missouri. Throw Missouri in there. But so you're just kind of seeing how the teams are separating into tiers in different conferences, who are the best teams are, and we're starting to see the shape of college football, or the landscape of college football, take its shape as we reach this halfway point of the season. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you next week.